Hey, Tony DeWitt here, Missouri Appellate Attorney. I'm retired, and this is not legal advice. Everything I say is simply commenting on the law, and this will be what we're commenting on today. You know, every time I feel like I have seen the worst of the worst, that there just really couldn't be a worse discipline case for an attorney than this one, I am always surprised to learn how wrong I was. And today we have a really interesting one, in my opinion, that comes to us out of California. You may have seen that recently California voters approved this amendment to their constitution that essentially says if you commit petty crimes, you're still going to need to go to jail, which I think sort of put the California legislature on notice that, hey, we really would like to be safe and well policed and taken care of. And that's not a political thing either. I mean, that's just a basic human need. A basic need of any government is to take care of its citizens. And I think the people in California didn't feel like that was really happening, that it had become lenient land, so to speak. And there are certainly some things that would indicate that, at least with respect to attorney discipline, that's true. I'm now pretty much convinced that you could be caught on videotape axe murdering a nun, and you might get a really strongly worded letter from California. And that's especially true with regard to the bar. Today, we have a case involving a relatively famous lawyer out there in California. This guy is Edgar Sargassian, a private jet flying career con man turned confidential informant who admitted in court testimony nearly 2 years ago that he had paid a ringer to take the California bar exam for him. He has been disbarred. I want to I want to explain this because you would think that if you didn't really pass the bar, right? If the California bar found out that you really didn't pass the bar, that you paid somebody else to take it in your name, that they would sort of automatically lift your license right then. But that's not what happened. In fact, this guy did not get disbarred for not taking the bar exam, not passing the bar exam. That isn't why he got disbarred. He got disbarred because he was convicted of a federal felony, which begs the question of if he applies for reinstatement later on, because he did turn as a government informant and got some other convictions for the government. He only had to serve 6 months in prison. And as a result of that, he got this kind of he got a good deal out of the government in that regard. He only had to only spent 6 months federal time. That's a really good deal. And so now, within a certain amount of time, he can apply to be reinstated. The only question is California going to make him take the bar exam? To me, that's just a little bit crazy. I would have thought they would have immediately taken him and suspended him immediately when that information was released from this deposition where he admitted it under oath, but that's not what happened. So pay attention to the dates here. This is filed April 26, 2024. In March, they filed what is essentially a summary judgment motion to disbar Mr. Sargassian. And that's because he was found guilty of violating Title 18 U.S.C. Sections 1349, conspiracy to commit bank fraud, 201B1C, bribery of a public official, and 1001A2, making false statements. Effective November 30th, 2020, Sargassian was placed on interim suspension from the practice of law. In other words, they didn't disbar him right then after his conviction. With its request for summary disbarment, OCTC submitted evidence that the conviction had become final. Specifically, no party filed a notice of appeal within the statutory time period after the entry of judgment. So the statutory time period is usually somewhere between 30 and 45 days. So they knew basically in August of 2020 that this was a done deal, that there was no way for this guy to appeal his conviction. And of course, he'd entered into a plea agreement, so he was never going to appeal it anyway because he didn't want to take a risk of screwing up his potential good deal that he had worked out with the government. But in spite of that, they waited until 2024 to file this request for summary disposition. Essentially, the record of conviction, they say, establishes that he's liable. He was found guilty of violating these laws. Specifically, after the judgment of conviction becomes final, the court shall summarily disbar the attorney if the offense is a felony. And all of those things up there are felonies. And an element of the offense is a specific intent to deceive, defraud, steal, or make or suborn a false statement or involve moral turpitude. The record of conviction establishes both criteria for summary disbarment. The offenses are felonies, and they necessarily involve moral turpitude. Accordingly, we ask that we recommend that he be disbarred. So this recommendation then goes to the California Supreme Court. And this is something that also is pretty annoying to me. This is the order of the Supreme Court of California. Now, if you know where to look and you're willing to do the research, you can find all of the stuff that happened in that case online. But most people who are in search of a lawyer are not going to go to that level of effort. But here is the order of discipline, and it doesn't tell you what he did to get disbarred. Basically, it just cites a number of rules. It says he has to pay $5,000, and the money judgment is going to be collected by the state bar, and it's signed by Judge Guerrero. But again, it doesn't give the public any clue as to what actually happened in that case. And I think that is a tremendous oversight on the part of the Bar of California. Now, it's not uncommon for lawyers to get good deals when they go in front of a criminal court because usually the judges know who the lawyer is. And this guy was very famous. He was friends with Governor Newsom. He was friends with former President Obama. He had lots of selfies with lots of important people tacked up on his wall in the office where he shouldn't have ever been practicing to begin with. And the guy that he practiced with was the guy who took the bar for him, apparently. Now, the funny thing is that even after this has occurred, you would think that if the reason that he was disbarred is having somebody take the bar exam for him, and he was asked in that case who took the bar for him, and he stated the name of the individual, and when they got around to deposing him and asked him if he had taken the bar for this guy, he very wisely asserted the Fifth Amendment. So, because there's nothing on record, no admission on record that he did anything wrong other than the word of a now convicted felon, that guy hasn't lost his law license, which seems to me to be a bit of an oversight because, again, I wouldn't think that it would be too hard to prove that you could go and get, a lot of times bar exams involve blue books where all of the answers are handwritten. Those things are going to have fingerprints all over it. It seems to me it'd be pretty easy to fingerprint those and perhaps figure out that it wasn't this guy who took the bar exam. But again, you have to care enough to go the extra mile to get that result. And it's pretty clear that because there are so many lawyers in California, they just don't either have the time or the money or the interest in pursuing the more than one or two bad apples in California. It is pretty amazing when you get right down to it. Now, my wife sometimes fusses at me when we're late somewhere to go somewhere that I ought to drive a little faster. Speed limit's 45, but they really won't ticket you unless you're going, more than 10 miles an hour over the speed limit. And I always look at my wife and say, look, I'm a rule follower. If the rule says 45, I'm going to do 45. And I do that because I believe that the rules are there to protect all of us. They protect not only the people coming toward me, but the people behind me and me in my car as well. So I follow rules. The same thing with the bar. The bar has a very explicit set of rules that I have to follow, and one of them is not doing something criminal and getting caught. Well, basically, it's not doing something criminal because it doesn't matter if you get caught, you did it. So I just won't do that, and I think that's the way you play the world. If you are living this life and you're living your best life, and in addition to that, you believe in God and you believe in the 10 Commandments, it is important, I think, to be moral and do the right thing. It amazes me how many people don't subscribe to that theory. Now, I got to tell you, there are a lot of really good lawyers in California. I know some of them. There are a lot of really good people generally in California. I know some of them too. This is not a knock on the state of California. It's just a knock on the state bar there being unable to police its lawyers. If you look at what happened with Tom Girardi, where he stole millions from clients, if you look at what happened with Michael Avenatti, who stole millions from clients, and I'm sure there are dozens more who have stolen millions from clients, it seems to me that there ought to be a little bit more aggressive enforcement in the land out there in California. But for whatever reason, it isn't. But as the recent elections proved, the government has to listen to the voters. So it seems to me that if that ballot measure passed that called for stricter enforcement, maybe the people of California ought to pass a ballot measure that said, hey, hire enough people in the California Disciplinary Agency for attorneys and make them police these attorneys a lot better. So that's what I have for you today. Thank you very much for being here. If you have any questions about this, drop them in the comments down below or email me at the address above. Like, share, subscribe, all those things we ask you to do. And of course, if you have the opportunity today, do a kindness for someone. Anything you can do to make somebody's life better is a good day. Then come on back down here tomorrow, join me at the beach, and we'll make fun of some other lawyer. I shouldn't have to say this, but you don't seek legal advice from a guy down at the beach. You seek it from a lawyer in a lawyer's office, where there are people running around in suits and secretaries and all kinds of other people. I'm just a YouTuber. I'm a retired attorney at this point, and although I retain my license to practice in the state of Missouri, I am not here dispensing legal advice. I'm just offering general content on the law. And here are some videos that YouTube thinks you may enjoy.